Okay, today we're here. We are learning the miter saw safety. Make sure you check out online our PowerPoints for the miter saw safety. We're going to have here the computer with us to be able to help us go through all the safety, and any safety that you see will be posted there. So check that out. All right, here we have for the safety of this miter saw, we have a Bosch miter saw and a real nice Bosch stand. This thing here has lots of extensions on it. It has a lot of different parts. It is a very nice rig. One of the first key things to safety is making sure that we keep our equipment clean. Being clean means it's going to be safe for us to operate. Okay? So again, newer piece of equipment, make sure it's clean. We'll go from there. All right, so our miter saw, I'm going to kind of come across the corner here, flip through the PowerPoint so I can keep on track with our safety. So I'm going to kind of step in here. All right. First thing is we want to go through some of the parts. What I have here on the PowerPoint is I have a screen that does go through all the parts of the actual miter saw itself. But do remember that we do have a miter saw stand, so there's going to be a little bit of safety in that too. All right. So we'll start right up here with the miter saw. First thing we want to go over with the parts is we want to go over the actual motor itself, which is located right here on top. Okay. Down from there we have our D-handle trigger. There is two small safety devices on each side. Okay. Below that is our actual saw unit itself, where the saw blade is located. And this is a 12-inch sliding compound miter saw. Okay. It has a carbide tooth blade in it, so that we can do rip cuts, cross cuts. We can do just about any cut that needs to happen on the board. All right. Below that we have a nice table, and it is a compound table, which means it is allowed to be able to move side to side at different angles for a cut. All right. Behind that there is a dust bag, which I'll pull off here and make it easier for the camera to see. Okay, so there's a dust bag that's attached to the machine, so it catches any of the dust. It catches probably 60% of the dust that we create as we cut. All right. This here actually has a zipper on the bottom. Okay, and the best way to make sure this is clean is you take it over to a garbage can. All right, you unzip this, you shake it out in the garbage can, rezip it, and then a nice thing is it slides in and snaps in place. So you want to make sure that happens right towards the back of the spout. Okay. Behind that there is an extendable rig that allows us to slide the saw out. Okay. We can slide this out. It allows us to make about a 12-inch wide cut. Okay. Along with just the diameter of the saw blade being 12 inches, we can again cut a fairly large board. All right. Here in front of the saw, when I showed you we could do it at the saw at a miter, all right, there is a gauge right down here that shows us all the way from 0 to 60 degrees in either direction. Okay, so we can make an angle cut 0 to 60 degrees either direction. All right. There is a clamp hold down. Okay, on the one side, allows us to strap or hold the boards down in place while we go to cut. All right. And then, of course, we go down from there and we're looking at our stand. Our stand is really nice in that it actually extends out. Okay, and to extend the stand out, you just release the lever here, and there is a knob on the back side that you loosen. Okay, and it'll extend out. And this is to hold like a longer board. So, for instance, I have a board here. All right. It allows us to safely hold that board in place, which is real nice. Okay, when this is not in use, we want to make sure that we leave the saw with the extenders all the way in. They don't necessarily have to be locked down in place, but just to slide them in. All right, it makes the unit smaller so that we can get around it clean a little bit easier. All right. Okay, the unit does actually take and it folds up. In this position, it's folded out. We want to leave it in that position in the wood shop. It just makes it portable, so if we want to take it to any job sites or anything like that, we can easily take it with us. But at this point, we just want to make sure that it's out and it seems stationary. If it's not, then you want to talk to me and we can go ahead and we can adjust it whichever way we need to at that point just to make it stationary. Okay? All right. let's see, let me check my PowerPoint here. Oh, they show a fence. I kind of forgot to talk about the fence. The fence is towards the back side here. All right. Nice thing about the fence and the table on the miter saw is when we go to cut our lumber, the saw actually forces the lumber against the table and fence, so there is no chance of a kickback on this saw. All right. So again, no kickback, which allows it to be much safer. Okay, at the very back, and I'm going to kind of walk around the back side here, there's a little lever. You're okay over here. Just go right over here. Okay, there's a little lever on the back side, and it allows us to slide our fence right to left. Right. And with that, that allows us to be able to make a miter cut and not have our saw blade actually hit the fence itself. We don't want that to happen. Okay, so you have to remember to move that when you go to make a cut. I'll show you how that works. All right, on the right-hand side of the saw here, so you want to come around the right-hand side, there is a little, you guys see too, there is a little red knob right here. Okay, that little red knob allows us to release the head unit in the up position so it's ready to make a cut. Okay, so to do that, you may have to slide back just a little bit. To do that, you press down on the head unit itself and you pull out on the red knob. All right, and then slowly let the head unit up. Okay, what we don't want to do is just let go of it because then it slams up and it can ruin a bunch of the mechanisms. All right, and then in this position you can see the guard itself actually slides down and in place, and it guards the saw blade. All right, so we want to make sure that happens. If this guard isn't working, let me know. We definitely need that to fix because we've got to make sure all the guards work. All right. Okay, there's a few fine adjustment things here, so if you're making multiple cuts to the same depth, you can adjust some of this stuff. Down here there's a lever here to make the bevel, which I'll show you how to do that. You can make a bevel cut. Okay, in the front of the saw, I'll come back around. Alright, there's a twist knob here in front. If you loosen that up, it'll allow us to pull this lever down underneath and allows us to actually turn the saw to miter. Okay, now there's certain spots here in the table that when you turn the miter, it'll click into place, right? And there's specific measurements like 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, different measurements that you'll typically cut when you go to make cuts with the miter saw itself. All right, the bevel lock right here, you need to push that down when we go to change the bevel. The bevel means like a sideways angle to the board. Okay, you push that and allows you, it's like a locking mechanism, allows you to move this to a bevel. And then there's a lock here in the front here. This one here also again allows you then to bevel the opposite direction. Okay, so that's what these two mechanisms here are for. All right. Now, anytime you go to make a cut, always make sure you turn our locking device for our miter. Make sure you turn the screw. Make sure you turn it all the way in so it locks the head of the unit so it's not moving on you as you're making your cut. All right. Okay. Stand back just a little bit. Let's see. Most of the parts we've gone through here, so we're going to go to the next slide. And our next slide is what does the miter saw do? The miter saw cross cuts, miter cuts, bevel cuts, compound miter cuts, any piece of lumber. Okay, so I'm going to briefly explain to you how that goes. All right, so we have a rough piece of stock here, lumber. Okay, this is actually walnut. Now, when we talk about different cuts, we talk about a cross cut. Okay, if we hold the board like this, all right, this way is lengthwise, this way is across the board. All right, the miter saw is not designed to make a rip cut or a lengthwise cut. Okay, it's designed to cut across the grain. So a cross cut is this direction, right across the grain. All right, a miter cut then is going to be across the grain, but at an angle. Whether it's 15, 30, 45, we can go across the grain at an angle. All right? A bevel cut means we can go across cut, but we can take the saw and we can actually turn it at a bevel. Okay? And we can cut it so that there's an angle going this way of the board. Right? So instead of a miter cut, now we're doing an angle this way. Bevel cut. Okay? And then we have a compound miter cut. A compound miter cut allows us to make a miter cut, but then bevel it at the same time and cut. So miter, bevel, cut. Compound miter. Simple enough? All right. Go on the next slide here. How it works. The miter saw runs a 12-inch saw blade, which we talked about. Okay, at high RPM. It is run by a series of belts. Okay, so from this motor down to the cutter head itself, right in this mechanism here, there's belts. All right. From an electric motor close to the blade, which we talked about. Remember, do not force the saw blade. Which means if we're cutting this piece of lumber, don't sit there and force the saw blade into it, because what will do to these belts? They'll tear them up, make them slip, right? We don't want that to happen. So definitely don't force the blade into the piece of lumber. Alright. Safety to follow. Number 1 step, 4-inch safety margin at all times. Alright, that means our fingers, we don't want the saw to take them out. So we got to make sure our fingers are 4 inches away from that saw blade at all times. Alright, so if I'm just making a simple cross cut here, okay, I'm just going to cross cut the board. Alright, I want to make sure that when I'm holding this board, I'm at least 4 inches away from this red zone, which is our cut zone. Got it? So 4 inches away. Now, do you necessarily have to measure that? Not necessarily. But if you're more comfortable measuring it and putting like a piece of tape or something on the saw for you, just so you remember, that'd be perfectly fine. Alright? But again, with lots of experience, I don't have to do that, so I just make sure my hands are away 4 inches at all times. Alright? Now, what changes the variables? If we go and if we're making a cut this direction, we're holding over here. Okay, if we turn our miter at an angle, did my saw blade just get closer to my fingers? Nope. It did, didn't it? So I got to make sure that I then slide my fingers back further, okay, to make sure I'm away from that blade. Any angle you turn this blade at is going to make your fingers slightly closer. So you got to remember, oh, my fingers are closer, I need to back up. Okay? Alright. Step here in front of us. All adjustments when the saw is off. You see here it's not running, so we make sure any adjustments we do, whether we set the miter or whatever it is we do, we make sure it's just in the non-operational position. All right. If you're more comfortable, you can unplug the saw. They call that zero state energy. All right, unplug it. Anytime we have to touch the blade, we unplug it, calling it again zero state energy. That means there's definitely going to be no power whether we pull the trigger or not coming to that saw. All right. Make sure the saw blade revolves freely. All right. To make sure the saw blade revolves freely, what do we have to do? And plug it. Good. So we'll unplug it. We'll come over here. We'll just give the saw blade a turn, making it so that we make sure it turns freely. This saw is new. It doesn't have any issues. We didn't use it a whole lot last year. We used it some. So it still doesn't have any issues at this point. I just used it the other day, so we're set to go. All right. Set the miter reading on the gauges 0 to 45. So I talked about those gauges, and I showed you how to set that, right? Very simple. All right. More safety steps to follow. Setting the miter angle, I showed you how to do that. Do you guys want me to go over that again, or are we good? Okay, I'll set the miter angle. Setting the bevel angle. Setting the bevel angle, again, is slightly different. All right. Again, the bevel angle is back here. There's a gauge way back here that shows what that bevel angle is. Okay. And to set that, we want to release the locking mechanism. I can remember how here. Okay. Now you see there how it allows us to set it at an angle. Okay, if we wanted it at this angle, we go ahead and we can lock it in place, and then it won't move on us. All right, now here's our issue. All right, we now set a bevel at this. If we run the saw head down, what's going to happen? It's actually going to hit the fence right here, right? You guys see that on the camera there? Okay, it's going to hit here in the fence. That's an issue. We do not want this blade to hit that fence. Number one, it ruins the fence. Number two, it ruins the blade. All right? So what's the solution to that? Move the fence. Remember I said there's that mechanism release back here? All right, move the fence back. Lock it back in place. Now, we can go ahead and make a bevel cut, right? And our fence is out of the way. Perfect. Okay? see. Oh, to go back into position again. Lock. Okay, there. Make sure the shield works properly. We just did that. We're good there. Okay. Clamp the wood. We talked about how to clamp the wood. You just move this little clamp over. I can show it here. Okay, you want to loosen it up so that it goes the thickness of the board. Okay. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you. You know how many times I've ever used this clamp? Pretty much never. Okay, because again, the saw forces the lumber to the table. And typically, your hands are, unless you have a really short board, which this thing actually really doesn't get close to anyways. Alright, it really creates no help, really. It's kind of more of a hassle than anything. But if you're not comfortable, please use this. Alright? I've always been comfortable just using the saw, so I've never ever used one to clamp. But if you're not comfortable, use it. And actually, if you're not comfortable, definitely talk to me. It'd be even better. Alright? We'll try to help make things a little bit more comfortable. More safety steps to follow. Do not cross the hands in front of the blade. Alright? So for instance, if we are holding the lumber on this side of the saw, we hold with our left hand. So if the lumber is to the left side of the saw, you hold with your left hand. If it's to the right side of the saw, you hold with your right hand. Here's the reason why, is we don't want to hold on the left-hand side of the saw with our right hand, because the D-handle power switch is on the right hand, the right-hand side. We go to hold like this, and we go to cut. Guess what's going to happen with the blade? It could hit you in the arm, right? Okay, so you never ever cross your hands when you go to cut with a miter saw. It's always left hand, left side, right hand to cut. Right hand, right side, left hand to cut. I know not everybody's really good with their left hand, but it's pretty simple to cut with a saw on the left side with your left hand. Okay, so never cross hands. Arms, hands, however you want to call it. Cut at a firm, steady pace. Don't go fast through the saw, or through the lumber, right? It can ruin the belts and everything we talked about. Don't go real slow, because that takes forever. Just a nice, steady pace, and I'll show you how that goes here in just a minute. Do not force the saw, okay? We talked about that earlier. Sliding saw, start with the old slide out, or with the blade slide out, okay? So if we want to make a cross cut, we have a fairly wide board, right back here in the back corner. There's like a little thumb mechanism here. You push that down. Okay, see how it unlocks itself? Alright. Okay, and at that point it allows us then to take and slide the saw out. Okay, always slide the saw out before you go to make a cross cut on a fairly wide board. Alright. See if we have any more safety stuff here. Yep. Leave the saw in the down position and wait till it stops. Now, when we start this saw to make a cut, we're going to slide it all the way out. Then we're going to start it in the up position, go down, make the cut, and in the down position we let go of the trigger. And you wait for it to come to complete stop in the down position. Okay, then allow the saw to return to its upward position. Alright, don't ever just let it go. Okay, because that's again, can be dangerous. Cause injury. Okay. Wait for the blade to be at full speed before cutting, and again I'll show you how that goes here in just a second. I'll show you how to actually cut. Okay. And different things to demo. Cross cut, miter cut, all those good things. And I'll show you exactly how that works here. Okay. Plenty more than enough for it. Okay, so here we go. We're just gonna, we don't have to have it in a sliding position in order to make this cut, so we're just gonna lock it in the back position. Alright, I'm going to cut from the left side so the camera can get a decent view of it here, and then you guys can see it too. Alright, these stands should be adjusted to the height of the table. Okay, you see here they're actually not, so I'm just going to take and I'm going to adjust these up. There's a little lever here on the back side. Allows us to move this up. And we'll take that down. Okay, and then we're set straight. If you ever have troubles with that, make sure you talk to me. I can help you set that. Now my board's going to get shorter here as I cut it, so I'm going to make sure this isn't slid out too far. Lock it back in position. Okay, and I'm just going to take a small little cut off the very tip of this. Now, typically what I do is I'll measure my pieces out. I'll put a little line here. Okay, and then it'll allow me to slide the saw down and line up with whatever marking I have to make my cross cut. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to cut the very end off. So I'm just going to line it up so I cut the very end. Okay, and I'm just going to make a simple cross cut. Now again, I'm holding on the left-hand side, 4-inch safety margin, and I'm going to cut with my right hand. Okay, to cut with my right hand, I have to push in on that little safety mechanism I talked about on the D handle. Push in on that and pull the trigger. Make sense? And when I go to let go, I let go of the trigger and then let go of the safety device. Okay, so here we go. I'm push in. Okay, it comes to a complete stop in the down position, and then back up. Cross cut. Miter cut. And I'm not going to do any particular angle, I'll just go here at a 15-degree angle. Again, it changed my variables, so I'm going to make sure my hands are back a little bit further. I'm going to make sure that I can actually contact the whole board. Okay, a miter cut. Start in the up position. Release, down position, wait for it to come complete stop. Okay. Every so often you probably want to clear your scraps, right? Okay, put them on the floor so you're ready to sweep up, works good too. Bevel cut. Just do a real simple small bevel. Okay, I'm going to make sure again my blade doesn't hit the fence, which we're okay. I'm going to line my board up. Make sure my safety margin's good, cutting with my right hand. Make sure everything's locked down good, and we should be set. Okay. We're set. And one last cut. Compound miter cut. So all I'm going to do is I already have my bevel set, right? I'm going to put it at a miter. Okay, I'm going to make sure I don't hit my fence. And I'm good. And I'm going to make a compound miter cut. So we're compound miter cut. That's a pretty neat cut if you ask me.
That's pretty neat.
It is.
Can I eat that?
Let's see. And that should be it. Okay, now, at this point what I do then is I'd make sure when I set it all the way back, okay, I put it all the way back to 0. I'm going to be down in the down position. I'm going to lock it in place. I'm going to empty the bag if I have to. Otherwise, I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to sweep everything down to the floor. Okay, and then sweep the floor up. Then I'm all cleaned up and everything's put away and we're done. Alright? Questions on the miter saw? No questions? Safety's pretty simple. Okay. Now at this point, what you want to do is you want to, after viewing the PowerPoint and viewing the video, you want to come to your instructor and go over the safety with your instructor, show the instructor the operation, and then take a safety test with a 100% on that test, and then you will be a safe machine operator for the miter saw.